Hi, my name is Mike Hudson. I'm from Vanderbilt County. My favorite sport is long distance running, and here's more information about athletes like me.
Now, let's focus on learning more about the athletes served by Special Olympics. We will explore the similarities between our athletes and all athletes, the eligibility requirements to participate in Special Olympics, special consideration for working most effectively with athletes, and a program designed to keep our athletes safe from potential abuse. Athlete safety is the top priority for anyone involved with Special Olympics. Each athlete is required to have a medical form and application for participation on file. Medical forms must be on site at every Special Olympics competition. These documents are confidential and should only be viewed for their intended purpose. Access to medical forms must be limited. Medicals must be updated every 3 years by the athlete or his or her parent or legal guardian. Forms should be updated more frequently if relevant information changes. Special Olympics is not a certifying body in first aid, seizure training, or CPR. Trained medical personnel will be on site or called if necessary at all competition. As a volunteer, it is your job to stay with the athlete and send for help in a medical emergency should the situation arise. Volunteers are not expected to, nor should they, provide medical help unless specifically instructed to by official medical personnel. Volunteers are encouraged to attain CPR and first aid certifications through organizations such as the Red Cross. These sessions are periodically offered at the Special Olympics Indiana State Conference. Above all, volunteers should remember to use common sense and practice basic safety precautions at all Special Olympics events, whether it is a local practice, a social event, or a state competition. Let's review some key points about eligibility. Athletes must be at least 8 years old to compete in Special Olympics. There is no maximum age limit, so athletes can continue to participate throughout their lifetime. The Young Athletes Program does allow children between the ages of 2 and 7 to participate in Special Olympics, but only because it is a non-competitive situation. Determination of eligibility is made by local professionals through medical, school, or service agencies based on diagnostic criteria. Special Olympics Indiana does not determine eligibility but relies on trained professionals. All athletes must register by completing a form and an application for participation through their county program prior to participating. As we've mentioned before, Special Olympics is for adults and children with intellectual disabilities. To become a Special Olympics volunteer, it is not necessary to have previous experience working with our athlete population. However, a basic understanding of intellectual disabilities will make your volunteer experience more enjoyable. People with intellectual disabilities do not learn the same way as their non-disabled peers. They learn at a slower rate and have a more limited capacity. This leads to significant limitations in some key areas in life, such as communication, social skills, and personal care. Because our athletes' disabilities occurred either before birth or during their developmental stage of life, which is before the age of 18, many people also use the term developmentally disabled to describe our athletes. In the United States, approximately 3% of the population has an intellectual disability. As a volunteer, you may not have had much experience working with children and adults with intellectual disabilities. Here are some tips that should help you feel more comfortable and knowledgeable in your volunteer role. You'll soon realize that people with intellectual disabilities are more like you than they are different. Working with people who have intellectual disabilities requires no specialized training. They may learn at a slower pace or have a limited capacity to learn, but chances are they like and dislike many of the same things you do. If you are unsure about how to respond to an athlete, you should respond as you would to anyone else. One of the most important things you can do when working with people with intellectual disabilities is to be yourself. Special Olympics athletes really appreciate being treated like everyone else. They don't want pity or exaggerated praise. Your normal voice and honest encouragement is the best way to show your support and respect for their efforts and achievements. Language is also very important. Always remember, word choice matters. Words can open doors to cultivate the understanding and respect that enable people with intellectual disabilities to lead fuller, more independent lives. Words also can create barriers or stereotypes that are not only demeaning to people with disabilities, but also rob them of their individuality. Special Olympics does not use the R word in any form and asks that its volunteers refrain from using it as well. Also, volunteers should use people-first language. For example, you should say a person has autism rather than saying the autistic person. This focuses on the individual rather than the label. Uncertain of whether or not any of this really matters? Ask an athlete. They'll be glad to tell you just how much words really do matter. Special Olympics Indiana strives to treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of the type of intellectual disability they possess. However, there are some issues common to our athlete population that you might not be familiar with. Let's explore some of these issues so that you can better understand our athletes. In less than 10% of individuals with Down syndrome, there is a malalignment of the cervical vertebrae in the neck, called atlantoaxial instability. This issue can be determined by an X-ray, and some sports require additional measures to be taken if the problem exists. Some athletes have physical disabilities as well as intellectual disabilities. These athletes are eligible for Special Olympics. Those with only a physical disability, such as paraplegia or muscular dystrophy, and no intellectual disability, are not eligible. Lower ability events are being offered to accommodate participation by Special Olympics athletes with physical disabilities. It is necessary for some of our athletes to take medications for different reasons, such as seizures, behavior, hyperactivity, or other issues. Basic precautions need to be followed to make sure athletes take medications at prescribed times and quantities and follow other medical recommendations. Programs will have a designated volunteer or volunteers whose job it is to handle medications. Volunteers who are not comfortable handling medications will never be asked to do so. A small percentage of athletes have a seizure disorder that may increase under times of stress or change. Most seizures are controlled with medication. It is important to remember that when a seizure does occur, you should remain calm and follow the guidelines described in your volunteer handbook. To find out more specific information about athlete issues, consider attending a Coaching Special Olympics Athletes class.
Hi, my name is Katie Kelly. I'm from Porter County Special Olympics, and my favorite sport is swimming. Now you're going to hear more about the rules of Special Olympics volunteering.
There are a variety of volunteer opportunities available through Special Olympics that require various levels of time commitment, skill, and energy. In addition to direct work with athletes, our volunteers become involved in a variety of administrative tasks such as fundraising, outreach, public relations, administrative work, and event management. To make sure that you are matched to a volunteer role that fits your interests and abilities, be sure to talk to your county coordinator or area director. A Class A volunteer is defined as anyone who has regular contact or a supervisory role with the athletes, such as coaching, or who has financial or management level responsibilities. To become a Class A volunteer, one must meet 3 requirements. First, he or she must complete a coach volunteer application. Then he or she must attend this CVO training. And last, he or she must complete online protective behaviors. Class B volunteers are those individuals who help out on an event day only basis and do not have prolonged or one-on-one interaction with athletes. As such, they are not required to complete the same trainings and screenings as Class A volunteers. While every county and area program operates differently, there are certain duties that most all Class A coaches and chaperones will perform. Some of these duties include attending weekly practices, attending area games as a coach, and, depending on the county, attending summer games. At competition, standard duties include making sure the athletes are at the correct venue on time, assisting athletes in the dining halls as needed, and accompanying athletes to special events such as dances. This is not a comprehensive list of the responsibilities as a volunteer. Many volunteers also choose to participate in fundraisers such as the Polar Plunge and Plane Pole Challenge events to raise funds for Special Olympics Indiana. Most any volunteer you talk to will say that their Special Olympics volunteer experience is highly valued and is just as beneficial for the volunteer as it is for the athletes. The final step to becoming a certified Class A volunteer with Special Olympics Indiana is a brief online tutorial called Protective Behaviors. This is a very important part of your training as it explains what to do in case of abuse or suspected abuse of athletes. This training is for the protection of the athlete, everyone's top priority, and also for your protection as a volunteer. Hopefully, no one in this session will have to experience dealing with athlete abuse, but after completing the online training, everyone will be prepared and know how to handle that situation should it arise. In addition to volunteer training, you can also continue your learning to help prepare yourself for your future with Special Olympics. Additional training is offered to all levels of the organization. Educational sessions are designed to meet the varied needs of all volunteers in our program, from the coach, to the area management team member, to the fundraising person, to the athlete, and all of those in between. The annual state conference is the largest training opportunity offered, with more than 30 sessions. One of the best ways to better serve our athletes is to keep current on sports rules and learn new practice drill and coaching techniques. Thus, additional training is offered for sports. Coaching sports skills classes are presented on all sports offered by Special Olympics Indiana on a rotational basis. Courses on how to coach Special Olympics athletes are also available with expanded information to make the job of coaching more manageable. Once you've mastered these courses, there are more in-depth coaching classes, including a coaching strategy course and principles of coaching class, which gives structure to the job of coaching by teaching topics such as risk management, conditioning, motivation, and keys to success. Special Olympics encourages lifelong learning, so consider keeping your skills sharp or adding additional skills by attending one of these training sessions mentioned. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. We hope that your experiences with Special Olympics enrich your life as much as it does the lives of our athletes.